Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, Symbol Science of the Symbols, Part 23. We'll be following on from the last emblems and connecting alchemical symbols, constellations, weights and measures, and Rosicrucians and Freemasons, for instance, who have passed this craft on. So double-headed eagle started with that one, and this was a picture of a tattoo parlour, Gosford, north of Sydney, but it's a interesting one. Well, first, you got the all-seeing eye and a double-headed eagle. Might notice the scrolling as well, a bit of information going on there. But connections to alchemy, as in chemistry, and especially to, well, the double-headed eagle. Links in the description to some good sites as well, especially those where we have these Rosicrucian emblems and symbols. Double-headed eagle, sun, moon, silver and gold, mercury, sulfur, and well, more, and how these are alchemical recipes. There's no, well, tincture, again, tincture, one of the operations, like with calcination, distillation, coagulation. A tincture is one of those, something soaked in alcohol. Laudanum be a famous one. That's a tincture. But the double-headed eagle as an alchemical symbol, and we'll now again, links in the description. I mentioned Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, and in his writings, and these other, there's no shortage of to choose from, but well, Hermes or Mercury, Thoth, and well, Mercury of the Alchemists. These links will be in a description rather than go through it again. Also put these once more in there because of the alchemical influence on the gentle craft, and they speak about alchemical labs being in the larger Mason buildings, for instance. Rosicrucian emblems as well, how they have these symbols and the geometric origins of it, not the aspects that have been added to it later. And that's the important thing. So there's a lot of stuff about alchemy, but alchemy or chemistry has certain properties going on in it, and then spiritual aspects were added to it. So what we, just like in geometry, you observe things in nature and then you put them into your temples. So you're repeating what was already there. The temples, which especially have these phi ratios, nature did not copy the temples copied them. And so like alchemy is the same aspect. There's a lot of stuff out there and very little information, to be honest, about actual alchemical information. Rather the spiritual aspect of it, which I wouldn't, if that's what you go for, okay, that's cool, but what was the origin of these? So just like we study sunflowers to get these beautiful temple and artistic proportions, same with alchemy, by observing the alchemical reactions, the chemical reactions of things, and then from there adding the dogma, let's say, onto it. But the double-headed eagle, this symbol, now again, the Masonic tools, we've gone through those, they're in the constellations as well. But especially so Johannes Fabricus, or his original name Johann Goldsmith, right in this chunky period of time, and these images here now, for instance, the double-headed eagle as a reference to, before the official lodges, long before Albert Pike, these guys, they were studying the works of people such as these who actually studied much older works. So this goes back at least 2,000 years before them, actually much older than that, but in a sense where it's written down, it at least goes back to the Greek era as well, and they learnt it from Egypt. So again, showing an older tradition, older science where they come from, Egyptian. But the double-headed eagle, it's again, so we read those articles and writings, but what does it represent? Well, the alchemical wedding, or rebus. So we see the two heads connected there. So the same artist, the same alchemist and writer, two-headed eagle, and the same emblems. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Because so this concept of rebus, so just like the two-headed eagle and the concept of rebus, and well, rebus there. Now notice. See, the two heads here on this two-legged dragon, the wyvern, on the two-legged dragon, the wyvern there, and well, other, again, rebus, and the alchemical wedding, so the male and the union of male and female, Rebis comes from the Latin word meaning dual matter, so in a dualistic sense, very as above so below, you could think of it that way too. Again, these two heads coming together as one. Heinrich Kunrath, notice his hand symbol, very prolific guy, but even like on this, so I'm focusing on this portion there, but again, the male and the female, the sun and the moon, gold and silver, Rebis with the mercurial symbol, the symbol of the element, also the symbol of the planet, also the symbol of the god. And well, the birds of alchemy will come, but for instance, so we see the peacock, for instance, this is an important one, and even in, because you look closely at these, it's even written Aguila. What is that? That's the bird of Zeus. It's also a constellation, but the Aguila holds the lightning bolt of Zeus. The peacock, Parvo, the constellation, and that's the Hera, the sister wife of Zeus, a chariot drawn by peacocks. And also worth mentioning the constellation Corvus, the blackbird, who was also the servant bird of Apollo. And Corvus, the blackbird, also has a part in the Ark of Utnapishtim, the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Ark of Utnapishtim. We also have another constellation symbol there, that's Leo as well, so a clearer version. And this is another repeated theme throughout there as well. So there's constellation symbols, alchemical symbols, connected, and these gods. So the classical stories is not just a nice story, it's got information in it. Leonardo da Vinci, famously again, the Rebis, the fusion, the dual matter, the male and the female coming together. Robert Fludd, so I'm just again focusing in on this figure here, and again we see the union of their Rebis. Also, well, the Tetragrammaton, for instance, the Kabbalist name of God. Now, what's Flood doing? He's also got this hand symbol. This is what they're showing. I did a video a while back on it, but again, this is one of the ways to spot these guys, and they're also the geometry as well. They're all geometricians. So from the geometry, the arithmetic, the music, the astronomy comes the mystical. The mystical was not, it goes up, it doesn't come down. So these images as well worth noticing. So in the cup, this is another feature. Now here you'll see 3 birds, there you'll see 3 serpents, but again holding the serpent. We'll get to these a little bit more and get into depth later. But also in the background of that same picture, we have the pelican feeding with the blood from her chest, feeding her young. This is a Rosicrucian emblem, the Rosy Cross, which is also one of the rites in Freemasonry as well, but the Rosy Cross and the pelican symbol, I did a video on there as well, pelican symbolism, how, well, ubiquitous essentially it is. But also now we look at these Rosicrucian emblems, a Rose Cross, tincture again, but well, the double-headed eagle, alchemical symbolism as well embedded in there, and well, the sun, golden moon. The sun is gold, Apollo, and the moon is silver, Artemis. But the pelican, yeah, feeding, so that's another one. Now, again, this is that one of the ones where we started off with Fabricus. But what also has he got there? The 3 birds fused together. Now this is, I'm not sure if this is Geber or one of the other Arabic alchemists, but notice the Rebis, we'll get to this as well because this is connected. But the 3 birds, the white, the black and the red, and this alchemical artwork which is detailing one of the, so just like distillation, coagulation, sublimation, we also have calcination, where we have these 3 birds, red, black and white. And, well, what do we got? The peacock as well. And what's that? Mercury, Caduceus. Is it the Caduceus? But anyway, what's going on in that scroll work? Oh my, same thing. Oh, what's in those columns? Oop. Oh well, same thing. So the double-headed eagle, the alchemical Rebis connection, and back to you, Johannes Fabricus, and these drawings here. So same symbols, emblems going on, and this is a nice connection because it brings us to, well, these are alchemical representations. and the information is embedded in a dogmatic sort of spiritual mystic sense, but it's actually containing hard science, very important science. So whether it's metallurgy and these other aspects, it's the basis of, is that Azoth or Thoth? Oh, maybe something else. But anyway, alchemical, masonry, these are the tools of the trade. Okay, back to the double-headed eagle and alchemy and the concept. So that picture was a nice one. It just happened to be that the reflection was from the discount chemist, as we call them here, or we also say pharmacy, pharmacist as well, but the chemist is usually the store. The pharmacist is the guy inside or lady inside the chemist. So pharmacy, now pharmacists, chemists, apothecary, it's the same thing. This is an old-fashioned pharmacist. You would go to the apothecary. Now this from ancient Egypt, usually connected with food and wine. Well, food and wine is essentially, you are what you eat, and so again, like a good doctor is also a nutritionist, and and will try to avoid more dangerous medicine and get you on a good diet. Now, but however, so this Egyptian one is usually connected with food and wine. Well, we see alchemical connections. Cleopatra the alchemist, for instance, and these early Gnostics, especially the ones connected with Hermanubis. But again, we're seeing that these, the jars and, yeah. But, okay, so this is also the world's oldest surviving prescription. Various types of plant remedies. But what is just like a pharmacist or apothecary would use herbs as well as powders and liquids and such. So we go back to 2000 BC or older, and the Sumerians and Babylonians and apothecaries and medicine men, if you want to call it. But so old-fashioned, so an apothecary, but this comes from the Greek word apotheke. I'm not sure if I get the pronunciation, but it's Greek word for storehouse. This is an old medieval depiction of a woman going to the apothecarist or the chemist, the pharmacist, and this is a symbol connected with them. So, for instance, the craft, well, anyway, in the old days, people weren't as literate. You didn't have a big sign, money lend. You would have 3 hanging balls from the top. That was a sign of a pawnbroker. Now, this is also, so the old days, the Barber Surgeon. So if you went to get a lance boiled, lanced, or these type of operations, you'd go to the Barber Surgeon because he had the knives, he had the scissors, he had this type of thing, and that's where the red and the white symbol would come from, because their bandages would be bloody, and but this is carried on. Even this is a mobile barber, but it's a nice reference to Barber Surgeon in that way. Again, the symbols of there now. Oh my God, what's that one? It's a nice one too. Connected back again, same thing. Here in Sydney, for instance, the apothecary or the storehouse, now people would go to what used to be called the dispensary. So this is a John Story dispensary. And so for the Sydney Hospital, now the chemist or the pharmacist is usually in-house. Used to be more because of the division of the craft guilds, for instance, but now, the doctors would be in the hospital, but the dispensary would be a separate building. Now it's more together, but this is again, connection back to apothecaries. Now, this being their symbol, so just like the craft guilds would have a symbol at the front rather than a written sign, there would be the stripes for the Barber Surgeon. Or this here, now this is a colonial American drawing, picture, painting of an apothecary. Again, all the jars and the jugs and containing the medicines and the compounds. So now the chemist the pharmacist, the boxes come ready made. He just grabs it off the shelf and puts it to you. Even when I was younger, I remember that the pharmacist would often make pills in house because he would have the basic ingredients, and it was still stuff off the shelf, but now it's almost entirely off the shelf and very little actually made by the pharmacist in house. But back in the day, so you have that symbol. But what else is an important symbol? Another one connected with apothecaries or pharmacy in the original times, the scales, because they would have to weigh and measure these things very carefully. Hermes, same thing, god of knowledge, of science. He's the god of alchemy. He's the god of commerce and weights and measures. What does the apothecarist do? He has to have science, knowledge to do the symbol. So even the caduceus, the double-headed snake, which Okay, the recorder dropped out, but so Hermes, Mercury, or Thoth in Egyptian, the god of knowledge, which is science, commerce, weights and measures. Apothecaries, what do? They're engaged in science. They're making medicine. It's obvious. Now, they're also engaged in commerce, and they rely on weights and measures and the scale. Now, they also have their own weight system, or they did before everything got standardized in the metric sense. But also, when they happen to convert to metric, what do we have? 648, 1296, 388, 8. Oh, I'm sure I've seen those before, harmonics. But Hermeticism, now also these symbols connected to those weights, well, you might recognize those as well. And comes back to Johannes Fabricus and this illustration. So we have the Rebis, we have the three in the cup, and well, the same emblems: ignis and aqua, water and fire, Draco, Hermes Mercurius. Hermes Mercurius. Siena Cathedral has Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus in there as well. And so what we have is, well, alchemical symbols connected to, well, just Hermeticism and these Hermeticists. Even Draco, so the constellation Draco, or the dragon as well, is worth referencing. And as someone pointed out, anyway, Archet. You seem to have a reference to Archet there as well. But those symbols, well, the wyvern, now apothecaries and the wyvern, brings us to the Apothecraries Guild in London, one of the craft guilds in London, going back to 15th, 16th century. We see the emblem there on top. We get a better picture of it here. What do we have? Apollo, the wyvern, two-legged dragon. There's Apollo on the two-legged dragon. Apollo, the sun god, emblem of, okay, so Apollo carries the arrow. So apart from the lyre, he also, another one of his symbols is the golden bow and the golden arrow. Hephaestus, or Vulcan, the lightning bolt of Zeus was made by Hephaestus. The helmet of Hades was made by Hephaestus. The silver arrow of Artemis, Diana, the moon goddess, was made by Hephaestus, and so was the golden arrow and bow of Apollo. Apollo, the son of Zeus, brother of Hermes or Mercury. The wand, the caduceus, is a wand, a magic wand that was given to Hermes or Mercury by Apollo, and wand translates to measuring rod as well. It's also an emblem of peace, that brought peace to Olympus. There was going to be a war in Olympus between Apollo and Hermes. Hermes gave him the lyre made of the tortoise shell. The tortoise is also a symbol of Hermetic symbol of peace, and in return for the lyre, he got the magic wand from Apollo. Wand being, again, translates to the Greek measuring rod, measuring wand. Thoth, all these guys carry it. That's what it is. So Apollo, son of Zeus, brother of Hermes, we got the same constellations and these old legends connecting also to alchemy and the Greek gods. Azoth, that in Hermetic or alchemist, that is the element Mercury, for the essential element of transformation. Well, it's Cronus once more, but we have a mercurial symbol there. We have Mercury. We have the birds connected to, so the constellation Pavo from Hera and Argus, which is again, Argus was decapitated by Hermes. Aguila, the eagle, the constellation, and the servant bird of Zeus. Zeus was married to his sister wife Hera, who was drawn by a chariot of peacocks, the constellation Pavo, next to the constellation Ara, the altar of loyalty and the oaths made by the Olympian gods. And the peacock there, and also the black bird, the Corvus, which is a constellation as well. Corvus was a servant bird of Apollo, the son of Zeus. So what we have is all these the ancient symbols that have been passed on and are the foundation for the modern science, so are these same tools. And Hermetic wisdom, Hermes, Mercury, god of science, knowledge, commerce, weights and measures, and especially weights and measures being the key then, now as ever, to the sciences, and also these alchemical constellation symbols which just blend over, and even just again how curious that the metric so often comes back to these points. Now, so these Hermetic symbols, these were the study, and the truth shall set you free, measure. Now the wyvern's another. So in St Andrew's Cathedral here in Sydney, this is the wyvern on the side. Now there are a few other stories connected with this particular one. This is, I think, the emblem of Ghent as well, where we see that same two-legged dragon creature. Hermes Trismegistus, alchemy, weights and measures, science, this all blends in together. It's part of this coherent system which goes back quite some time. And so with that, hope you enjoyed. A lot more to come. Measure, and the truth shall set you free.